Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, dogs, cats, and welcome back to Calm Down and Level Up. After a small break, I was on a trip for a while. I'm now back, so the videos were a little irregular. The First World War and the Every State Independent video was actually supposed to go out on Friday, but it messed up and I accidentally put it out on Monday. So it took forever for that video to get out. But here we are, we're going to be doing regular videos again. And today, I have a fun battle for you guys. We're doing the EU versus the AU, or the African Union versus the European Union. So Germany is the leader of the European Union faction, and then we have Ethiopia as the leader of the African Union faction. I guess I probably could have used Belgium as the leader of the European Union just because the European Union headquarters is in Belgium. I made Ethiopia the leader of the African Union because the African Union headquarters is in Ethiopia. But I think Germany works as well for the European Union leader. I actually don't know who's going to win this because I know Europe has better tech, but Africa actually has a lot more divisions. Europe also has more factories though, so we need to be careful about that. Africa has more manpower as well. If we look here, we can see that Europe has 223 divisions, 359 factories, and about 963,000 fielded manpower, less than 1 million manpower total. Whereas over in Africa, 286 factories, so less factories, but 341 divisions, and roughly 2 million manpower. So Africa has a lot more divisions out already. Now, are those divisions good? Probably not, but the more the merrier for Africa, I guess. Now, the members of the African Union I added by looking at the official African Union website. Has a list of all the official members. So the two that were not on there were Somaliland and Western Sahara. So those two are not in the African Union. We left England out of the European Union. I know it's technically still in the EU right now, but we're just gonna say, you know, it's left at this point. All right, these guys are at war with each other. Both factions are at war with everybody. Hopefully this doesn't run terribly slow. I think this one will be actually pretty fine. This doesn't involve the whole world. This is just two very large parts of the world. And here we go. The two Spanish colonies on the coast of Morocco were just taken. So I guess that is technically the first land grab in this whole war, is the Spanish losing their little colonies. As for naval superiority, the Africans do seem to have the edge right now in both the eastern and western Mediterranean Sea. Not quite the central areas yet, but if they keep it up in the western Mediterranean, that could lead to an African naval invasion, which would be pretty incredible to watch. Now it looks like the African Union is getting Russian volunteers. Makes sense. So the Algerians just lost a major portion of their navy over here in the western Mediterranean though. So that's not that good for them, obviously. The US is now supporting the EU. Okay, there has been a successful landing by European Union troops in northern Tunisia. They have not taken a port, quite a dangerous thing to do, and now they're being attacked by Russians and African forces together. These guys aren't going to survive for much longer. But that does show that the EU is able to make landings into North Africa, and eventually they'll probably catch on. Alright, so I just noticed that Sudan is actually no longer in the African Union, although it is still at war with the EU. So I guess Sudan was maybe like forcibly moved out of the faction for being bad, but Sudan is no longer partaking in that peace deal, so the EU could very easily invade Sudan on its own, and then actually turn it into an EU puppet and make that an invasion point. And the African Union wouldn't really be able to do anything about it. There was another landing in northern Algeria, but this time it was by Polish units. Again, the Russians are not going to allow them to work. Oh, look this, Sudan rejoined. Without the Russian help, I think the African Union would be doing a lot worse right now. There's Russian troops actually everywhere. There's Russian troops down in Nigeria. There's Russian troops in Mauritania, Algeria, Egypt. The Russians are everywhere, trying to keep Africa alive. England and America are sending support to Europe. This is kind of turning into another proxy war between Russia and America, somehow. Somehow an event this big turned into a little proxy war between Russia and the US. So far, it looks like the EU has actually lost divisions and 118,000 deaths, whereas Africa only lost 6,000. It's only had 6,000 casualties so far. Africa is actually doing pretty good, but hold on, what's this? Algeria is 39% towards capitulation. What's going on? Okay, a major coastal city was taken by a French division, but the French division is going to get kicked out pretty instantly. So we've just had two pretty big developments here. The UK rejoined the EU. Can you believe that? Jeez. As well as the US. They both joined the European Union to help fight Africa, the evil menace that is Africa. They've also landed in Senegal. There's just one Greek there left, but there used to be quite a few more divisions. But the US joining is going to change a lot. That's going to add a lot more divisions and a lot more manpower into this for the EU side. Right now, the EU is actually losing. They haven't lost any land, but they've lost 400,000 dudes, and Africa's only lost 20,000. The EU has way less divisions, and they had even less than they have right now. They had like 170. Now they're at 212, just because the US and England rejoined. But we'll have to see how the African Union reacts to it. Maybe they'll get some foreign members in themselves. So it's March in 2018 in the game. It hasn't really been going anywhere. It's been mostly stalemated. Basically, the EU would be making a landing into North Africa, and then the landing would be killed off, and then it would just repeat. So I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting. The Arabian Republic is basically just a united Middle East. That's going to act as a neutral country like we used to do in some of our battles, where people would fight over a certain area. Europe and Africa are going to fight over the control over Arabia, and then eventually they'll have a border against each other in order to fight. So this should allow a better battle to happen. Alright, over here we have our African forces making their advance into Arabia. They've taken all of Israel and Palestine so far. Europe has taken Istanbul and a large portion of Greece so far. During this advance, it looks like there was a pretty successful American landing into Alexandria. That could be pretty dangerous for Africa, actually. If this landing is successful, then a lot of these troops that are moving into Arabia could get cut off in Cairo, and the whole Egyptian army could be destroyed. That would not be good. That would probably spell the end for Africa. Okay, so Bulgaria just flipped to the Spanish Union. That kind of cuts off all of the Europeans, because they've taken all of Anatolia here. Only Bulgaria, France, and Spain will be able to move on past this, unless Bulgaria changes back to the EU. Check this out. People's Republic of Somalia just formed. We have a communist Somalia. So Bulgaria flip-flopped for a little while, and now they're actually back in the European Union. They flip-flopped from the Spanish Union and European Union multiple times before landing back where they started. Now, here's the battle for Arabia right now. I'd say in Europe's favor because they've captured a lot more than they probably should have. I think Africa probably could have captured more than they have. But Arabia will capitulate pretty soon, and we'll see the effect of that happening. Also, we have our first casualty in this war. Sao Tome was killed off by the Netherlands, so rest in peace. Oh, India went communist. I didn't even realize that. Alright, so the US is being flip-floppy now. They've also just joined the Spanish Union. I'm not sure what that means for the world. Alright, Qatar was puppeted. Wow, a lot of things were puppeted. And then Arabia had the Nationalist Party put in power. But let's check the faction map mode. So, most everything joined the African Union, except for the territories still held by America. A lot of Iraq and Syria and Turkey, though, are still owned by Arabia, so they do need to capitulate. And that won't happen until the African Union dies. So, we'll see Arabia still own a lot of the Middle East for a long time. Kurdish state capitulated. The Kuwaiti state capitulated. A lot of these guys are going to start capitulating. Alright, so America left the Spanish Union again. Trump, can you make a decision, please? What is this? Great Korean Empire. Alright, South Korea is now fascist. Maybe the two sides can get along a little bit better now. So look at this African army advancing on America. America really shouldn't have, left their faction, because now they're on their own over here, facing literally hundreds of divisions. I don't know why that just happened. I think maybe they just left the faction. There we go. This view from Egypt. Now all these American divisions are going to slowly die, and this massive wave of African might is going to be pushing up towards Europe. Alright, I've just noticed two pretty serious landings down in Angola and Congo. Made by Poland and England. There's actually quite a lot of divisions down here. There's Romanians, Polish, British, Portuguese. Everyone's down here. I guess they abandoned this landing. That would have been a pretty good one. New faction. Okay, so England and America decided they're going to create a third faction. The British conquered that. Okay. So what all could have been just the European Union is now 3 different factions fighting a united Africa. That's why Africa's doing so good over here in the Middle East. More landings in Nigeria as well. Some of these guys might actually get capitulated by this. This is pretty interesting. Okay, wow, more major announcements. I think we have the Congo is completely dead. They've completely capitulated here. We also have this Polish naval invasion that was going off, yeah, it's doing really well, and they're totally going to kill off Angola here. I think what happened is the Africans are focusing too much on pushing America back in the Middle East, that there's multiple landings in the actual continent of Africa that are doing a lot of damage. Tunisia is now capitulated to the US and France a little bit. There's a couple provinces that belong to France. More landings in Egypt, although these might not work out as well because of all the divisions that are actually over here. But if this does work out, a lot of these guys over in Africa could get cut off and all killed off. If this is successfully cut off here, that means all these divisions will be cut off from their capital, and a lot of these divisions will be severely hurt by attrition. Just fighting in the Middle East, no connection to the capital. We have the People's Republic of Nigeria struggling here. Poland somehow invaded the top of Benin. Poland officially switched over to the British Concordat. I don't get it anymore. It's interesting though. Eventually the EU will just be a whole bunch of tinier EUs all fighting together. Okay, check this out. Spain capitulated Morocco. I didn't even notice that. I'm not noticing these things happening. We have Benin, Congo, Kurdistan, Egypt pretty close, Kuwait, Libya pretty close, Morocco, Nigeria and Namibia very close, Sao Tome and Principe, Algeria very close, Tunisia, the United Arab Levant pretty close, and Zambia pretty close. All of those, you know, capitulated or pretty close to capitulating. On the other side, we have Spain, who has lost 2 cities on the coast, which they should be able to get back pretty soon. I guess the UK and Croatia are currently holding them, and they can't get them back because they left the EU and formed the Spanish Union instead. I guess it's their own fault. But Africa is slowly being encroached on again by the Europeans. Although the Europeans are not safe either, because the giant force in the Middle East is slowly creeping, crossing into Europe. Very slowly, but it'll be there pretty soon. Tunisia has been recovered by Africa though, so that is a victory for them. And I guess that they'll want to go after Morocco again pretty soon, because Morocco is pretty undefended by the Europeans. Somehow this landing into northern Egypt is still going on and doing pretty good. They haven't really been able to capture anything else other than this, but this is a pretty good spot to hold for the Europeans. The Europeans have now lost 1.26 million troops, whereas the Africans have lost 530,000, so the Africans are catching up, but it's still way heavily on the European side of losses. Namibia is almost capitulated as well, and looks like the entirety of Angola is now capitulated. Southern Africa is in a bit of trouble here. Oh, it looks like Portugal has switched to nationalism. Nice. A lot of the nations actually in the Middle East left the African Union after they were liberated. The United Arab Yemen, United Arab Muscat, which is Oman, and United Arab, what is this? How about the United Arab UAE? The United Arab Emirates. Is what that would mean. Qatar and Kuwait formed a new faction. Oh my god. The African Coalition has formed to fight alongside the African Union. It's yellow, so it's an Egyptian faction. So now the African faction is even breaking up. It's getting less stable as we speak. So this is what we're gonna do, boys. I'm gonna let this game run for a few hours. We're gonna come back and we're gonna see what the peace deal is like. I'm sure it'll be very, very entertaining and interesting. Alright boys, I am back for this very slow game. It's not that the game itself was moving slow, it's just it took a long time for events to happen. But it appears that post-war, the African Union lost. This is what the faction map mode looks like right now. The EU is still alive. Actually, all 3 of the EU parts are still alive, but just barely. Most of Europe left them. The US left them. It's mostly just African states, as well as the remaining founders in Europe. And then also Argentina and Brazil in the European Union. But yes, as I said, it looks like Africa somehow was left in a worse position than before, borders-wise. You have all sorts of crazy stuff going on here that I would like to show you. First of all, America puppeted about half the world. Almost everything in the Middle East is puppeted by America, so this is kind of like an American wet dream here. But then you have a couple oddballs, like the Austrian North Africa. Libya is just gone, by the way. Libya, I guess, would be Austria North Africa, but a lot of Libya was taken into American Chad and American Sudan. Greece did very good. They occupy, well, not occupy, they actually own tons of Anatolia now. They don't actually own Istanbul. Arabia owns it. and Arabia is an American puppet, so America actually controls Constantinople. But Greece is looking pretty nice, and they actually have a lot of puppets. They have 5 puppets. They puppeted Greek Morocco, Greek Upper Volta, Guinea-Bissau, Greek Niger, and Sierra Leone. So all of these guys are now Greek puppets. As you can see when we go over to the US window, Trump is still president. It's 2035, so maybe all the liberals saying that Trump's gonna be a dictator, maybe they are actually right. But here we can see all the puppets. Most of it is in Africa, but a lot of it is also in the Middle East. Now actually we had action happen over in Asia as well. I checked some of this. It looks like China declared war on Vietnam and India and ended up puppeting both. So we have Chinese Raj and Chinese Indochina. This purple faction is the African Alliance. It's no longer the African Union, but it's still run by Ethiopia. Ethiopia is still the leader. So a lot of these guys kind of rejoined up together to defend themselves if they ever need to again. One last thing before we go, the American military, I would just like to show off, is insanely huge, 626 divisions. It appears to be the biggest in the world. I just checked Russia and China. China's at 603. But anyways, boys, thank you very much for watching this episode. If you guys liked this video, make sure to hit like, favorite, and subscribe if you guys are new. Leave your suggestions in the comments if you want to see something else. This video idea was a suggestion in the comments, and quite a lot of my previous videos have been as well, so I've been taking a lot from you guys. Anyways, again, thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys all in the next video. Peace.